Hey guys, it's Nicole here. Welcome back to another week of Troubleshooting Tuesday. Today we are going to be going over how to prevent your macaron shells from browning. First, let's go over what causes the browning of our macaron shells, and then we can figure out how to fix it. So let's get into it. There are a few factors that can cause the browning of your macaron shells, and most of them have to do with your oven. And then another one has to do with your technique. So let's get into our oven first. So our oven can brown our macaron shells by either baking too long, baking at too high of a temperature, or baking your tray too close to the heat source. And another thing that can cause our macaron shells to brown is actually during the meringue stage. If you're adding your sugar too late and your sugar is not getting completely dissolved, then your macaron shells can actually brown faster in your oven. So ways to fix the browning of our shells would be, one, if we're talking about the meringue, then you want to incorporate your sugar earlier and make sure you're whipping at a fairly low speed on your KitchenAid or whatever mixer you use until your sugar is dissolved. You can check by stopping your mixer and feeling your egg whites and sugar and make sure there's no granulars left. And that's when you can really kick up your mixer to a higher speed to start developing the volume in your meringue. If you know your sugar is dissolved in your meringue and that is not your issue, then let's go back to the oven issues and talk about how to fix them. So if you think that you may be baking too long, that's when you'll notice your shells are browning towards the very end of baking, okay? So if this is the case, you could try to cover the macarons at the very end with a piece of parchment paper. Make sure it's at the very end of baking, because if you cover your whole tray before your feet are established on your shells, it's gonna weigh your macaron shells down and it's gonna mess with the final product. So only towards the very end, like last 1 or 2 minutes, would you put a sheet of parchment over to help prevent browning. If you think you could potentially bake less time, that would be ideal as well. Instead of putting the parchment over, just bake a minute less and check the insides of your macaron shells. If they look pretty wet after baking, then you know you need that extra time, and that's when the parchment would be better. Another factor we talked about was if our shells are too close to our heat source. So depending on if your heat source is coming from the bottom or the top, you can move around your entire oven rack in your oven, either higher or lower, to see if that helps with the browning of your shells. If your macaron shells are browning from the bottom and your heat source is from the bottom, then I suggest raising your oven rack up a notch. Or if your macaron shells are browning on the top and your heat source is from the top, then lower down your entire oven rack one bit lower and see if that helps from the heat source as well. There's also the issue of cooking at too high of a temperature. So a few things I like to do with my macarons is after each tray, I will let my oven just get back to temperature and I'll wait like 5 minutes for my oven to regulate its heat. Because if I tend to put my second tray right in when I take my first one out, the temperature rises really high and I end up not having the best bake. So you could, if you're getting these brown shells mainly on your second tray, you could make sure that you have this little 5-minute break for your oven to sort of regulate its temperature before slapping that second tray in. Again, oven thermometer is really important so you can tell what is going on in your oven and you can really regulate better with your shells and know how to prevent the browning. If you feel like you are at a place where you're baking higher than 315 Fahrenheit, then maybe you can even drop your temperature down a little bit and bake a little bit longer and see if that helps with the browning of your macaron shells. There are also colors that just tend to brown a little bit more than others. They don't keep their colors well. And that topic I will talk on next Troubleshooting Tuesday for fading colors of your macaron shells. I've had a range of gas ovens to electric ovens. This one has a convection setting. The other ones were very old and not very nice. I mean, Really, any oven is going to be able to produce your macarons. You just have to figure out its little nuances. So I hope you don't feel discouraged by your oven. Buying a new one isn't always the best fix either. I've heard a lot of people say they finally got their macarons perfect in their old ovens and then they got new ones, and it's been a process to relearn. So don't think that just some new shiny oven is going to fix your problems. Try to work with what you've got, and I'm sure you will succeed after some trial and error. Thanks for watching, you guys, and I will see you next week when we talk about how to prevent fading color of your macaron shells.